These are different real estate terminologies. Understanding these terminologies also help you protect your investment. The first and most popular terminology in real estate is called C of O. C of O simply means certificate of occupancy. C of O means the government official receipt showing you have permission to use the land for 99 years. It is your strongest proof of ownership. And after 99 years, it has to be renewed again. Number 2 is called governor's consent. What is the meaning of governor's consent? This is the official permission you need from the state government when you buy a property that already has a C of O. Without it, the sale isn't complete in the government's eyes. So what that means is government consent is actually what you do after you purchase a property with C of O. Number 3 is something called survey plan. This is a map drawn by licensed surveyor that shows the exact size, boundaries of your land. It prevents you and your neighbors from fighting over where your plots start and stop. Number 3 is called escission. Escission simply means the government has officially given back a portion of land to the original family owners. It is the first step towards getting a C of O for that land. That is what escission means. The next is called gazette. What exactly is gazette? Gazette is a title that proves that escission is real or legit. So what that means is when we say land is gazetted, it simply means that the government have officially published in the newspaper that an excised land is now free from government acquisition. That's what gazette simply means. The next is called deed of assignment. What exactly is deed of assignment? Deed of assignment is a legal document that transfers ownership from the previous owner to the new seller. It is like a receipt for your sale. That is what deed of assignment is. The next is right of occupancy, R of O. R of O simply means a legal permission to use and develop a piece of land. That is what R of O means. It's a legal permission which gives you the right to develop a piece of land. It is one step to a C of O. Okay, the next is called ground rent. Ground rent is actually a yearly tax you pay to the government for land with a C of O. It's like paying rent to the government as your landlord. So ground rent is very, very important because if ground rent accumulates, whenever you want to perfect your title, you must pay up the ground rent before your title can be perfected. So the next is tenement rates. What exactly is tenement rates? This is a yearly tax you pay to the local government for owning a built-up property. The next is Land Use Act. Land Use Act is a 1978 law in Nigeria which makes the governor of a state the owner of every and any land. That is why you need a C of O instead of outright ownership. The next is called probate. What exactly is probate? Probate is a legal process of transferring ownership of a property from someone who has died to their inheritors. The next is consent fee. What is consent fee? This is the money you pay to the government to process your governor's consent. So the money you pay to the government to process your governor's consent is called consent fee. The next is perfection of title. What does perfection of title means? This means completing all legal process to make your ownership fully legal and complete. The next is encumbrance. Encumbrance simply means any legal claim on the property that could affect your ownership, like a mortgage or court case. That is what encumbrance means. The next is covenant. What is covenant when it comes to real estate? Covenant simply means the rules and restriction of your C of O about what you can do and cannot do. For instance, in every C of O clause, there may be a covenant enacted or written by the government stating that the land you purchase is meant for residential and not commercial. So therefore, if it's residential stated in the covenant of your C of O and you build a commercial property on it, the government can revoke the C of O. The next is called a beacon. What is a beacon? A beacon is actually an iron or concrete marker that shows the corners of your land according to the survey plan. The next is setback. What is setback in real estate? This is the required distance between your building and your property boundary to the road. The next is called title search. Title search simply means Checking at the land registry to confirm who the true owner of a land is and whether the land has problem or issues or encumbrances. The next is equity contribution. What is equity contribution in real estate? It's the part of the property price you pay from your own pocket, with the rest coming from a loan or partner. That is what equity contribution means. The next is JV or joint ventures. What is joint ventures? This is a partnership where one person provides land, another provides money or expertise to develop it. Then they share profits. It simply means a way of joining your skill or resource together to partner in any real estate project. That's what JV or joint venture simply means. The next is called power of attorney. What is power of attorney? It's the legal permission for someone to act on behalf of the property owner. The next is capital gains tax. What is capital gains tax? This simply means the tax paid on the profit you made from selling a property. The tax gain from the profit you made on selling a property is simply called capital gains tax. The next is called valuation. What is valuation? This is a professional assessment to determine a property current market value. So any property you want to sell or buy, one of the things that's recommended you do is to evaluate it by professionals. It gives you an idea of the current property value within that environment. The next is called an escrow. What is an escrow? This is when money is held by a neutral third party until all conditions of sales are met. Then the results will be released. That is what an escrow simply means. The next is called sublease. What is sublease? When someone who is renting a property rents it out to another person, it's called sublease. And for you to successfully do a sublease, you must ensure you write a written agreement between you and the property owner before engaging in subleasing, or else you will engage or have legal issues with the property owner. The next is called deed of mortgage. What is deed of mortgage? This is a legal document that uses a property as collateral for loan. The next is called land certificate. What exactly is land certificate? This is a document issued for land in rural areas, similar to a C of O but with less authority. The next is planning permits. What exactly is planning permit? This is an official permission from the local government to begin construction. That is what planning permits mean in real estate. The next is planning permits. What exactly is planning permit? This is an official permission from the local government to begin construction. That is what planning permits mean in real estate. The next is called building approval. What is building approval? This is actually the official permission for your specific building design and construction. The next is stamp duty. What is stamp duty? It's a tax paid on legal documents to make them valid. So legal documents cannot be valid until you pay the tax on it, which will then be stamped. The next is tenancy agreement. This is a contract between a landlord and their tenant. That is what tenancy agreement simply means. The next is called a tenant. Who is a tenant? A tenant is a person who is renting a property. The next is a landlord. A landlord simply means the owner of a property. The next is leasehold. What is leasehold? It is property you own for a fixed number of years, usually 99 rather than forever. The next is called freehold. Freehold is a land you own forever. It is rare in Nigeria since the Land Use Act. The next is called encroachment. What is encroachment? Encroachment means when a neighbor built on your property by mistake or intentionally. That is what encroachment means. The next is litigation. What exactly is litigation? This is an ongoing court case about a property. The next is called lease pendants. What is lease pendants? This is a legal notice that a property is involved in a lawsuit, warning buyers to be careful. That's what lease pendants means. The next is indenture. 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 What exactly is indenture? This is a formal legal agreement dealing with property rights. The next is appurtenance. What exactly is appurtenance in real estate? This means something that comes with a property, like an extra construction or an extra property or an extra thing attached to a property. It's called appurtenance. The next is easement. What exactly is easement? Easement simply means the right for someone else to use part of your land, e.g. for drainage or access. The next is covenant running with the land. What is covenant running with the land? This is the rule that applies to all future owner. It can be terms and conditions attached to a land that must be followed even after the land is sold and resold. So the new owner must follow those terms and conditions. The next is called defective title. What is defective title? These are legal problems with the ownership document. So whenever an ownership document have legal problems, it is called defective title. The next is marketable title. What is marketable title in real estate? This is an ownership that is clear and can easily be sold to others. The next is quiet enjoyment. This is your right as a tenant to use the property without unnecessary disturbance from the landlord. The next is actual notice. Actual notice in real estate simply means that you were directly informed about a property issue. The next is constructive notice. What is constructive notice in real estate? It simply means you are considered to have known about a property issue because it was in public record. The next is called warranty deed. What is warranty deed? This is a document where the seller guarantees the title is clear of problems. Thank you for watching. If you want a full PDF list of these real estate terminologies, kindly type in the comment section terminologies and I will send it across to you for free. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.